I turned off my phone and looked at my daughter Mia. Her tiny fingers were touching my face, as if asking why I was crying. But I wasn't crying. I was just breathing. For the first time in 2 years, I was breathing properly. I stood in the grocery store parking lot. Nobody here knew me. In this small Montana town, where only snow and silence existed, there was no Omega named Taylor Rossi. Here, there was only River, a single dad who worked at a bakery and lived for his daughter. "Daddy, juice," Mia said in her toddler voice. I smiled, a real one, reserved only for her. But suddenly, my body froze. A black SUV pulled up on the other side of the parking lot, and the man who stepped out was none other than Clayton Hayes. My ex-alpha, the man for whom I had abandoned my identity. But this was impossible. How was he here? I had kept my tracks so clean. I had deleted social media, legally changed my name, created fake accident records. He thought both I and our unborn baby had died in that car crash. Then he looked at me. My heart stopped. His dark eyes fixed on my face. Recognition didn't come immediately, because my hair was short now. I wore glasses and I had lost weight. I looked completely different. But then his gaze fell on Mia, and in that moment I knew I was finished. Because Mia's chestnut-colored silky hair, her almond-shaped gray-blue eyes and her dimpled chin, all these features were Clayton's family traits. Unmistakable. I pushed the cart abruptly and started running toward the store. "River? River, stop." It was my manager's voice, calling me from the parking lot. But I couldn't stop. If Clayton caught me, if he saw Mia closely, Taylor, that name. The one word I hadn't heard in 2 years, Clayton's voice. Right behind me, I stopped. Mia was confused in my arms, chewing on her juice box. I turned around. Clayton stood before me only 3 feet away, and his face was a battlefield of emotions. "You," he said, his voice trembling. "You're alive?" I wanted to run. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to grab Mia and disappear into the store, lose him in the aisles, escape through the back exit. But my feet wouldn't move. It was as if the ground had turned to cement, trapping me in place. Clayton took a step closer, and I could see his hands shaking. This wasn't the composed billionaire CEO I remembered. This was someone unraveling. "How?" he whispered, his eyes scanning my face like he was trying to memorize every detail, as if I might vanish again. "How are you here? I buried you. I stood at your grave. You buried an empty coffin," I said, my voice coming out harsher than I intended. Mia squirmed in my arms, sensing the tension. Clayton's jaw clenched. "An empty..." He stopped himself, glancing around the parking lot where a few shoppers were starting to notice us. "We need to talk." "Not here. We don't need to do anything," I replied, shifting Mia's weight. She was getting heavier and my arms were starting to ache. "You need to leave. Now." "Leave?" His voice rose slightly before he controlled it. "I just found out you're alive, Taylor. Do you really think I'm going to walk away?" "Yes," I said firmly. "Because you have no right to be here. You made your choice 2 years ago." "What choice?" Clayton demanded, frustration bleeding into his tone. "You disappeared. You staged your death. You denied me." He stopped, his eyes dropping to Mia, who was watching him with curious wide eyes. "You denied me the chance to even know about her." My throat tightened. Don't you dare make this about you." "Then what is it about?" he asked, stepping closer. I could smell his scent now, oak wood and smoke, the combination that used to make me feel safe. Now it just made me feel trapped. "Tell me, Taylor. Why did you fake your death? Why did you run?" "Because staying would have destroyed me," I said quietly. Mia's small hand patted my cheek, a gesture of comfort she had learned over the past months. "And it would have destroyed her too." Clayton's expression shifted, something like pain flickering across his features. "I would never have let anything happen to you. To either of you." I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "You couldn't even protect me from your own fiancé." His face paled. "Dora." "Yes, Dora," I said, my voice steady despite the tears threatening to spill. "Your perfect match. The woman who made it very clear that I was nothing more than a temporary distraction. The one who told me that if I didn't disappear, she would make sure I regretted it." Clayton's hands curled into fists at his sides. "When did she? Why didn't you tell me?" "Tell you?" I repeated incredulously. You were planning your engagement party, Clayton. You were choosing wedding venues. What was I supposed to say? That your future wife threatened your secret Omega lover? You were never a secret, he said desperately. Nothing, I interrupted. I was nothing to you, just like she said. Mia started to fuss, tired of being held for so long. I adjusted her in my arms, using the movement as an excuse to create more distance between Clayton and me. He noticed, and something in his expression crumbled. That's not true, he said softly. You were everything. Were, I emphasized, past tense. And that's where we're staying. I turned to leave, but Clayton moved quickly, not touching me but blocking my path to the car. Please, he said, and the desperation in his voice made me pause. Just give me 5 minutes. 5 minutes to explain. There's nothing to explain, I said, though my resolve was weakening. I could feel it, the old pull between us, the bond that had never fully broken despite everything I had done to sever it. 5 minutes, he repeated. And if you still want me to leave after that, I will. I promise. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the dark circles under his eyes, the new lines around his mouth, the exhaustion that seemed to radiate from him. This wasn't the confident alpha I remembered. This was someone who had been broken. Against my better judgment, I nodded. 5 minutes. But not here, and not now. I need to take Mia home. Get her settled. I hesitated, then added, there's a coffee shop 2 blocks from the bakery, Java Junction. Tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock. Don't be late. Relief flooded Clayton's features. I won't. Thank you, Taylor. I didn't respond. I just walked to my car, buckled Mia into her seat, and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I could see Clayton standing in the parking lot, watching us disappear. And despite everything, despite all the pain and fear and anger, a small part of me, the part I had tried so hard to kill, felt something close to hope. That terrified me more than anything else. I barely slept that night. After putting Mia to bed, I paced my small apartment, rehearsing what I would say to Clayton. But every scenario I imagined ended the same way, with me either breaking down or breaking things. Neither option seemed productive. By 6:30 the next morning, I was already at Java Junction, sitting in the corner booth with a lukewarm coffee I couldn't bring myself to drink. Mia was at my neighbor's place, Mrs. Chen, a sweet elderly woman who often watched her when my bakery shifts ran late. I had told her I had an early appointment. I hadn't mentioned with whom. Clayton arrived at 6:55. He looked like he hadn't slept either. He wore a simple black sweater and jeans, a far cry from the designer suits I remembered. When he spotted me, something in his expression softened, and he crossed the cafe in quick strides. You came, he said, sliding into the seat across from me. I said I would, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. 5 minutes starts now. He nodded, taking a deep breath. Dora and I aren't together. We haven't been for nearly 2 years. I raised an eyebrow. Congratulations. Your 5 minutes are now 4.5. I ended it a month after your accident, he continued, ignoring my sarcasm. The day I realized the engagement was a mistake, that I was marrying her for all the wrong reasons. Family pressure, bins mergers, expectations. None of it mattered once I thought I'd lost you. How touching, I said dryly. Too bad you didn't have that revelation before I was pregnant and alone. Clayton flinched. I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life regretting that. But Taylor, I need you to understand. I didn't know about the baby. If I had known— What? I interrupted. You would have left Dora? Chosen me? Don't insult my intelligence, Clayton. You made your choice clear when you proposed to her. That proposal was a business transaction, he said, his voice rising slightly before he controlled it. My father orchestrated the whole thing. Dora's family needed the Hayes name to save their company, and my mayor wanted their pharmaceutical patents. I was 26 and stupid enough to think duty mattered more than happiness. I stared at him, processing this information. So you were trapped in an arranged marriage, not arranged but heavily encouraged, Clayton clarified. And I went along with it because I thought— He stopped, running a hand through his hair in frustration. I thought you deserved better than someone who couldn't stand up to his own family. That's a terrible excuse, I said flatly. I know, he agreed. But it's the truth. When Dora found out about us, she gave me an ultimatum. End things with you or she would make sure you were destroyed. He had connections, resources. ways to make your life miserable. I thought I was protecting you by keeping my distance. You thought wrong, I said, my hands gripping the coffee cup so hard I was surprised it didn't shatter. Because while you were playing the noble martyr, she cornered me in a hospital parking lot, told me I was carrying a mistake that would ruin your life, threatened to expose me to my workplace, my family, everyone. So yes, Clayton, you really protected me. The color drained from his face. She did what? You heard me, I said coldly. And when I tried to call you to tell you what was happening, your number was blocked. Your assistant told me you were unavailable. So I did what I had to do. I disappeared. Clayton looked sick. My number was never blocked. I changed phones after the engagement because Dora insisted on a shared plan. She must have. He stopped, realization dawning. She controlled all my communications. Every call. Every message. That's why I never heard from you. Convenient, I said, though doubt was creeping in. His story made a disturbing amount of sense. After your accident, I hired investigators, Clayton said quickly. Spent hundreds of thousands trying to find out what really happened. They told me the car went off a cliff, that there was a fire, that the bodies were too damaged to identify properly. I had to accept DNA results that said you were gone. DNA results can be faked, I said quietly. I had help from someone who knew how to work the system. Clayton's eyes widened. Who? Someone who believed I deserved a fresh start, I replied, not willing to give up my source. Someone who saw what Dora was doing and helped me escape before it was too late. Was it that bad? He asked softly. What she did to you? I hesitated, then decided he deserved to know. She followed me for weeks, documented everywhere I went, everyone I talked to, sent me photos of myself at the grocery store, at prenatal appointments, at work, always with a message about how easy it would be to make me disappear. When I was 5 months pregnant, I started bleeding, stress-induced complications. The doctor said if I didn't remove myself from the situation, I could lose the baby. Clayton's hands were shaking now, pressed flat against the table. Where was I? Why didn't you? You were in Paris, I said, celebrating your engagement with Dora's family. It was all over social media. You looked happy. I was miserable, he said fiercely. Every second of that trip was torture because all I could think about was you. About how I'd thrown away the best thing that ever happened to me because I was too much of a coward to fight for it. Well, you got what you wanted, I said, standing up. A life without complications. Without me. Sit down, Clayton said, his alpha command bleeding through. I felt the automatic pull to obey and hated myself for it. Please, he added, softer. Your 5 minutes became 10 and I haven't used them wisely. Let me say this right. I sat, but only because my legs were tired. Not because he told me to. At least that's what I told myself. I don't want a life without you, Clayton said, his voice raw. I haven't wanted that for 2 years. When I thought you were dead, I fell apart. I quit the company, and the engagement, sold everything that reminded me of that life. I moved to Seattle, started over, tried to become someone you might have been proud of, someone who would have deserved you. That's very noble, I said quietly. But it doesn't change the past. It doesn't erase what happened. I know, he said. But it could change the future. Our future. Yours. Mine. And he paused, his voice catching. And our daughters. If you'll let me. I looked at him, at the hope and fear warring in his expression, and felt something crack inside me. Her name is Mia, I said softly. And she's the only reason I survived the past 2 years. The only reason I didn't give up completely. Mia, Clayton repeated, testing the name. It's beautiful. Like her mother. I stood again, this time more firmly. I need time to think about this. About whether I can trust you again. About whether letting you into our lives is safe. I'll wait, Clayton said immediately. However long it takes, just don't disappear again. Please. I nodded slowly, then left the cafe before I could change my mind. Because despite everything he had said, despite the explanations and apologies, one question still remained. Was Clayton Hayes worth the risk of breaking my heart all over again? The next morning I went to work at the bakery trying to act normal. My hands moved automatically, kneading dough, preparing pastries, serving customers, but my mind was elsewhere. I kept replaying Clayton's words from yesterday, analyzing every expression, every pause, looking for signs of deception. But all I found was sincerity, which scared me more than lies would have. "River, you okay?" my boss Marco asked, startling me out of my thoughts. "You've been staring at that croissant dough for 5 minutes." "Sorry," I muttered, shaping the dough with more force than necessary. "Didn't sleep well." Marco gave me a knowing look, but didn't press. He was good about not asking questions, which was why I lasted 2 years at this job. In a small town where everyone knew everyone's business, Marco's discretion was a blessing. I was in the back checking inventory when I heard the bell above the door chime. Normally I wouldn't have noticed customers came and went all day, but something made me pause. Some instinct that had kept me alive and hidden for 2 years. "Is River working today?" a familiar voice asked. My blood ran cold. "Clayton," I heard Marco's confused response. "Yeah, he's in the back. Can I help you with something?" "I'd like to speak with him, if possible," Clayton said politely. "It's important." I emerged from the storage room before Marco could answer, wiping flour off my hands. Clayton stood by the counter, looking out of place in his expensive casual wear among the bakery's rustic charm. When he saw me, relief crossed his features. "Taylor," he said, then caught himself. "River. Sorry. What are you doing here?" I asked, keeping my voice low. Around us, the morning crowd was starting to thin out, but there were still enough customers to make this conversation risky. "I wanted to see you again," he said simply. "To make sure yesterday wasn't a dream." "It wasn't," I said flatly. "And you can't just show up at my workplace. People will ask questions." "Then let's talk somewhere private," Clayton suggested. "Your apartment?" "I promise I won't overstay." Every rational part of my brain screamed at me to refuse. But the irrational part, the part that still remembered how safe I used to feel in his arms, won out. "Fine. But only because I don't want this conversation happening here." I told Marco I needed to take my break early, grabbed my coat and led Clayton out the back exit. We walked the 3 blocks to my apartment in silence. It was a small studio above a hardware store, nothing like the luxury condo I had lived in back when we were together. But it was mine, and it was safe. "This is where you've been living?" Clayton asked as we climbed the narrow stairs. "It's not a penthouse, but it's home," I said defensively, unlocking the door. The apartment was tiny, just a main room with a kitchenette, a bathroom, and a small sleeping area airtoned off by a curtain. Mia's toys were scattered across the floor and children's drawings covered the refrigerator. Clayton walked in slowly, taking everything in. His eyes lingered on the drawings, and I saw his throat work as he swallowed. "She draws? She's 20 months old," I said. "Mostly scribbles, but she's proud of them." He picked up one of the drawings, a mess of blue and yellow crayon. "Can I keep this?" The request was so unexpected that I didn't know how to respond. Sure, if you want." Clayton carefully folded the drawing and put it in his pocket. "Thank you." We stood there awkwardly, 2 people who used to know each other intimately, now strangers in a cramped apartment. Finally, Clayton broke the silence. "I meant what I said yesterday," he began, "about wanting to be part of your lives. Part of Mia's life. And I meant what I said about needing time," I countered. "You can't just walk back in after 2 years and expect everything to be okay." "I don't," he said quickly. "I know I have to earn your trust. Both of yours. I'm prepared to do whatever it takes." "Whatever it takes?" I repeated skeptically. "Clayton, you have a life in Seattle. A business, commitments, responsibilities. You can't just—" "I sold the business," he interrupted. 3 months ago. I've been freelancing as a consultant, working remotely. I can do that from anywhere." I stared at him. "You sold Hayes Industries?" "I sold my shares to my brother," he clarified. "The company's still in the family, but I'm out. I needed a fresh start, away from everything that reminded me of the person I used to be." This was too much. Clayton loved that company. It had been his entire identity. "Why would you do that?" "Because that life cost me you," he said simply. "And I wasn't going to make the same mistakes again. When I found you yesterday, I knew this is my second chance. Maybe my only chance. I'm not walking away from it." "You're insane," I said, but there was no heat in my words. "You threw away your entire career on the possibility that I might forgive you?" "Not a possibility," Clayton said, stepping closer. "A hope. And yes, I know it's crazy, but loving you always made me a little crazy." My breath caught. "Don't say that." "Why not?" "It's true," he said. "I never stopped loving you, Taylor. Not for 1 second in the past 2 years. And I know you probably hate me. And I deserve that. But our daughter, she deserves a father who shows up. Who tries. Let me try. I wanted to say no. I wanted to protect myself. Protect Mia from the possibility of disappointment. But looking at Clayton, seeing the raw vulnerability in his eyes, I couldn't deny that he meant every word. 1 week, I said finally. You can stay in town for 1 week. Get to know Mia. Let her get comfortable with you. But no promises beyond that. And if at any point I feel like this is too much, if I think it's hurting her, you leave. No arguments. Hope bloomed across Clayton's face. 1 week. I can work with that. And ground rules. I continued. You don't tell her you're her father. Not yet. We start slow. You're just a friend visiting. Understood. Clayton agreed. When can I see her? I checked the time. I pick her up from daycare at 3. You can come by then if you want. But Clayton. I waited until he met my eyes. Don't break her heart. She's been through enough. I won't, he promised. I swear on everything I am, I won't hurt either of you again. After he left, I sank onto my worn couch and put my head in my hands. What had I just agreed to? Letting Clayton back into our lives was dangerous. He had the power to destroy us all over again, but watching him hold that crayon drawing like it was precious, seeing the longing in his eyes when he talked about Mia, maybe, just maybe, people could change. I just hoped I wasn't making the biggest mistake of my life. That evening, I reluctantly invited Clayton to my apartment. The week I had promised him was half over, and despite my reservations, I had to admit he had been respectful of every boundary I set. He never pushed, never demanded more time than I offered, and always left when I asked him to. Mia was on the floor with her toys when he arrived, having a very serious tea party with her stuffed bunny, Mr. Floppy. When she saw Clayton walk through the door, her face lit up with genuine guessing. Guest, she exclaimed, clapping her tiny hands together. Clayton knelt down beside her, looking slightly awkward but willing. He picked up the stuffed bunny carefully, as if it might break. Who's this? Mr. Floppy, Mia said with the utmost seriousness. He drinks tea. Do you want some too? Clayton glanced at me with an expression somewhere between helpless and endearing. I just shrugged. This was his scene to navigate. He was the one who wanted to be part of her life. Yes, he said, turning back to Mia. I'd love some tea. For the next 10 minutes, I watched something I never thought I'd see. Clayton Hayes, former Billionaire CEO. Ruthless businessman. Someone who had commanded boardrooms and made grown men nervous. Sat cross-legged on my worn carpet, pretending to sip from plastic teacups while my daughter offered him cookies that were actually wooden blocks. You're silly, Mia giggled, clearly delighted by his participation. You're sillier, Clayton replied with a soft smile, and something in my chest tightened. He looked at me then, and his eyes held a mixture of gratitude, pain, and regret that was almost too much to witness. I retreated to the kitchen, unable to watch anymore. It felt too real, too dangerously close to what a normal family might look like. I busied myself making coffee I didn't want, my hands trembling slightly as I filled the pot with water. Through the doorway I could hear Mia's delighted laughter and Clayton's patient responses to her endless questions. The paranoia that had kept me safe for 2 years whispered warnings. This was exactly what I had run from. The possibility of hope, the temptation to believe things could work out. Hope was dangerous. Hope got people hurt. She fell asleep. Clayton's voice came from behind me, making me jump. I turned, surprised. Already? That was fast. Yeah, he said, rolling up his sleeves. The domestic gesture seemed strange on him. I covered her with a blanket on the sofa. She must have been exhausted from all that entertaining. I walked into the living room to check. Sure enough, Mia was curled up peacefully. Mr. Floppy clutched to her chest, her breathing soft and even. My heart clenched. This scene, this domestic, peaceful scene, was everything I wanted, and everything I feared. Thank you for this, Clayton said quietly from the doorway. For letting me spend time with her. You should go now, I said without turning around. I can't, he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. I faced him. You promised. 1 week and we're only at day 4. I said I'd stay for a week to get to know Mia. I never said I'd disappear after each visit without trying to fix what's broken between us. He took a step closer, careful not to wake our daughter. She's my child, Taylor. You kept that from me. You stole 2 years of her life from me. You're unbelievable, I said, my voice cracking despite my attempt to stay strong. You have no right to come here and you had no right to hide the truth. His voice rose before he caught himself, glancing quickly at Mia. She stirred but didn't wake. When he spoke again, it was controlled but intense. Do you know what it felt like thinking you were dead? I abandoned everything. Taylor, the company, my family obligations, all of it. Because I spent months searching for you, convinced there was something wrong with the accident report. Stop making yourself the victim, I said coldly. You were with Dora. You were happy. I was never happy. The frustration in his voice was palpable. Dora was a business arrangement. Family pressure. Corporate merger nonsense. I didn't love her. I loved you. I still love you. Something inside me cracked at those words. You're too late saying that. Then give me time to prove it's not too late, he said, closing the distance between us. His hands cupped my face gently, forcing me to meet his eyes. Let me show you I changed. Let me be the father Mia deserves. And the partner you needed me to be 2 years ago. I wanted to push him away. Every instinct screamed at me to protect myself. But his touch, his scent of oak and smoke, the intensity in his eyes, it all weakened my defenses. One more week, I heard myself say. The words came out before I could stop them. You can stay for one more week, to get to know Mia better. After that, we decide what happens hence. Relief flooded Clayton's features. He leaned down and kissed my forehead. Gentle and lingering, filled with promises I wasn't sure he could keep. Thank you, Taylor. I won't waste this opportunity. After he left, I sat on the sofa next to my sleeping daughter, watching her peaceful face in the dim light. What had I just done? Giving Clayton another week meant giving him more chances to integrate himself into our lives. It meant risking both our hearts if this didn't work out. But as I looked at Mia, at the crayon drawing of what might have been her father that she'd made earlier that week, I realized something terrifying. Maybe I wanted this to work. Maybe despite everything, the pain, the betrayal, the fear, part of me still wanted Clayton Hayes in our lives. And that scared me more than anything else. The next morning, I woke to a text from Clayton. He'd sent a photo of the crayon drawing I'd let him keep, now framed and sitting on what looked like a hotel nightstand. The message read, "Good morning. Thank you for yesterday. Can I bring breakfast for Mia today? Pancakes." I stared at the message for a long moment. This was what moving forward looked like. Small gestures, cautious steps, the slow rebuilding of trust. It terrified me. But for Mia's sake, for the possibility of giving her what I'd never had growing up, a complete family, I had to try. Okay, I typed back. But make them chocolate chip. Those are her favorite. His response was immediate. Chocolate chip pancakes it is. See you at 8. I confirmed and set my phone down, looking at Mia, who was just starting to wake up, rubbing her eyes with tiny fists. Morning, baby, I said softly. Clayton's bringing breakfast today. Are you excited? She nodded sleepily, then said something that made my heart stop. Clay nice. Like daddy. I froze. She'd never asked about a father before. Never seemed to notice his absence. And now, after just a few days with Clayton, she was making that connection. Sweetie, I started, not sure how to explain, but she was already distracted by Mr. Floppy, pulling him into a hug. I sat there paralyzed by the implications. If I let this continue, if Clayton became a permanent fixture in our lives and then left, how would I explain that to her? How would I fix her broken heart? But the alternative, keeping them apart when they clearly connected, seemed just as cruel. I was trapped between impossible choices, and the clock was ticking. Clayton transformed everything in just 1 week. Every morning he arrived with breakfast, pancakes, fresh fruit, and sometimes the donuts that made Mia squeal with delight. He'd rented a hotel room near the bakery and spent every evening at our apartment. Mia had started calling him Clay Uncle, and I could see her attachment growing stronger each day. Fast. Too fast. And me? I was getting attached again too. Stupidly, dangerously attached. One night after Mia was asleep, we sat together on the couch. Clayton reached for my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine in a gesture that felt both familiar and foreign. Taylor, he said softly, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. I can't lose you again. Either of you. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed on the coffee table. An unknown number. I picked it up and my blood turned to ice. The message read, "Thought you were dead, Omega. That was your mistake. Clayton isn't yours anymore. If you try to take him back, what will happen to your daughter?" Attached was a photo of Mia at the playground that afternoon. Someone had taken a close-up shot of her playing on the swings. The angle was deliberate, invasive, threatening. "What's wrong?" Clayton asked, noticing my expression. I showed him the phone and his face went pale. "Dora, your ex-fiancé sent this?" My hand was shaking. "She's been watching us?" "Watching Mia? That insane?" Clayton grabbed the phone, his jaw clenching so hard I heard his teeth grind. "I'll handle this. She won't touch you or Mia. I swear." He immediately started typing on his own phone, presumably messaging his security team, his lawyers, anyone who could help. I watched his alpha protective instincts kick in, saw the dangerous edge enter his expression, but all I could think about was that photo. Someone had been close enough to my daughter to take that picture. The next morning, I was getting ready for my bakery shift when I heard a knock. Clayton wasn't due until later. When I opened the door, my worst nightmare stood there in designer clothes and blood-red lipstick. Dora. She looked exactly as I remembered, elegant, polished, and wearing that same cruel smile that had haunted my dreams for 2 years. "Hello, Taylor," she said sweetly. "Or should I call you River?" I tried to slam the door, but she wedged her expensive heel in the gap. "We need to talk, you and I. Woman to woman." "Get out," I said, my voice shaking with equal parts fear and rage. "Or what?" Dora's smile widened. "You'll call the police? And tell them what exactly? That you faked your death? That you've been hiding Clayton's daughter from him? That you're living under a fraudulent identity?" I wonder who they'd believe. The deceased person with fake documentation, or me, a respectable businesswoman concerned about a child's welfare. She was right, and we both knew it. I had no legal standing. Officially, Taylor Rossi was dead. River didn't exist in any meaningful legal sense. "Leave Mia out of this," I said, hating how my voice trembled. "Oh, but she's the whole point, isn't she?" Dora stepped closer, invading my space. "Clayton never belonged to you. You were just a distraction, a temporary lapse in judgment. Now that he's seen you again, properly seen you for what you are, a frightened Omega living in poverty with a fake name, he'll come back to me. He'll realize where he truly belongs." "He ended things with you," I said, trying to sound confident. "Temporarily," she said dismissively. "Grief makes people do irrational things. But Clayton's a practical man. He knows I'm his equal, his match. You? You're just a bakery worker with nothing to offer him except complications." "I have his daughter," I said. "Exactly." Dora's smile turned predatory. "And that's why you're going to make a choice. By tomorrow night, you'll tell Clayton you don't want him, that this whole reunion was a mistake. You'll send him away permanently, and if I don't," she pulled out her phone and showed me a document, a custody case draft with Clayton's name on it. Obviously fake but disturbingly convincing. "This is fabricated," I said. "Right now it is," Dora agreed. "But I have the best lawyers money can buy. I also have connections to judges, social workers, and child welfare agencies. One phone call from me expressing concern about an unfit parent with a fake identity raising a child alone. They'll investigate. They'll find out about your fraudulent death certificate, your illegal name change, your complete lack of legitimate documentation. The court will declare you mentally unstable. They'll rule you an unfit mother. And Mia? She'll go to Clayton. And eventually Clayton will come back to me." My throat went dry. Everything she was saying was possible. I had created this house of cards, and she knew exactly how to make it collapse. "You can't do this," I whispered. "Try me," Dora said. Then she leaned close to my ear and added, "Tomorrow evening, tell Clayton it's over. Tell him you never wanted him back. Make it convincing. Otherwise your daughter won't just lose her mother. She'll end up in the system while the courts sort out the mess you've made. Do we understand each other?" Without waiting for an answer, she turned and walked away, her heels clicking sharply against the hallway floor. I closed the door and collapsed against it, sliding down until I was sitting on the floor. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I just stared blankly at nothing, my mind racing through impossible scenarios. Dora was serious. She had resources, connections, and the ruthlessness to follow through. I had nothing except fake papers and a daughter I'd do anything to protect. Which meant I had to do exactly what Dora demanded. I had to send Clayton away. I had to break whatever was rebuilding between us. Not because I wanted to, but because keeping Mia safe mattered more than my heart, more than Clayton's feelings, more than any chance at happiness we might have had. I sat there until my legs went numb, planning how I would destroy the fragile hope we'd been building, because sometimes loving someone meant letting them go, even if it killed you to do it, especially if it killed you to do it. I called Clayton and asked him to meet me at Java Junction, the same cafe where we'd had our first real conversation after he found me. Neutral territory. Mia was safe at daycare, which was all that mattered now. When Clayton arrived, concern was written all over his face. You didn't answer my calls this morning. I was worried something happened. Sit down, I said, my voice flat. I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen without interrupting. He sat across from me, his brow furrowed. Taylor, what's going on? I told him everything. Not just about Dora's visit this morning, but about what happened 2 years ago. How she'd tracked me when I was pregnant, followed me to doctor's appointments, sent me threatening messages, how I was ruining Clayton's future, how she'd cornered me outside the hospital after I'd been treated for pregnancy complications caused by stress. She told me I was carrying a mistake that would destroy your life. I said, my voice steady despite the pain. She had photos of you two together, plans for your wedding, proof that you'd denned her over me. When I tried to reach you, your number didn't work. Your assistant said you were unavailable. So I believed her when she said you didn't want me anymore. Clayton's face had gone from concern to horrified. My number changed because Dora insisted we get a shared phone plan after the engagement. She must have blocked you, intercepted your calls. It doesn't matter now, I interrupted. What matters is that she's back, and she's not bluffing this time. I showed him the message. The photo of Mia, everything Dora had shown me. With each revelation, Clayton's expression grew darker, more dangerous. I'll destroy her, he said quietly, but there was steel in his voice. She won't get anywhere near you or Mia. You can't protect us from this, I said. She's right about everything. I'm legally dead. I have a fraudulent identity. Any investigation into my background will prove I'm unfit to have custody of Mia. The courts will take her away from me, then we'll fix your legal status, Clayton said, leaning forward urgently. I'll hire the best lawyers. We'll get your death certificate reversed, legitimize your identity, do whatever it takes. And how long will that take? I demanded. Weeks? Months? What happens to Mia while we're fighting legal battles? Dora's already shown she can get close to her. What if she saclates? What if she decides not to wait for courts and lawyers? Clayton grabbed my hand across the table. Then what are you suggesting? This was it. The moment where I either trusted him completely or destroyed everything we'd been rebuilding. I took a shaky breath. I was going to tell you to leave, I admitted, to push you away and disappear again. That's what Dora wants. For me to end this so you'll eventually go back to her. That's insane, Clayton said. I would never, but I'm not going to do what she wants, I continued, cutting him off. Because I'm tired of running. I'm tired of being afraid. And I'm tired of making decisions based on what manipulative people threaten me with. Clayton's eyes widened slightly. What are you saying? I'm saying I need your help, I said. The words difficult but necessary. I need you to fight for us. For Mia. For whatever this could become. Because I can't do this alone, Eleanor. Relief and determination washed over Clayton's features. He pulled out his phone and dialed, putting it on speaker. Dora, he said when she answered, his voice cold as winter. This is the only warning you're getting. If you contact Taylor again, if you go near Mia, if you even think about thwarting my family, I will systematically dismantle everything you care about. Clayton, you can't seriously. Dora's voice came through, sounding less confident than before. I have documentation of your father's financial crimes, he continued. Tax fraud, embezzlement, illegal offshore accounts. I've had investigators working since you first threatened Taylor 2 years ago. One press conference, and your family's company collapses. Your father goes to prison. Your mother loses everything. Silence on the other end. Additionally, I have evidence of your harassment. Messages, photos, witness statements from Taylor's hospital stay when you caused pregnancy complications through intimidation. I have security footage of you following her. Try to take this to court, and I'll bury you in criminal charges. Stalking, harassment, attempted extortion. You'll be lucky if you're not the one declared unfit for society. You're bluffing, Dora said. But her voice wavered. Am I? Clayton asked. Test me. Go ahead and file that custody case. I'll countersue immediately and present every piece of evidence I have. Or you can walk away right now, leave the country like you've been planning, and never contact us again. Choose quickly. He ended the call and looked at me. She won't bother us anymore. I promise. You really had all that evidence? I asked, shocked. I've had investigators working since 6 months after your death, he admitted. Something about the whole situation felt wrong. When they couldn't find your body, I had them dig into everything, including Dora's activities before the accident. I found out what she did to you, but by then I thought you were dead. I kept the evidence anyway, planning to use it someday. I didn't know what to say. Clayton had been protecting me even when he thought I was gone. I love you, he said suddenly. I've loved you since the day we met. I made terrible choices. I was a coward when I should have been brave, and I let my family's expectations ester more than my heart. But I'm not making those mistakes again. You and Mia are my family now, and I protect my family. Tears finally came, breaking through the walls I'd built. I love you too, I whispered. I never stopped. Even when I hated you, I loved you. Clayton moved to my side of the booth and pulled me into his arms. I let myself break down properly, releasing 2 years of fear and loneliness and desperate hope. We'll fix this, he murmured into my hair. All of it, together. And for the first time in 2 years, I believed him. 6 months later, the Montana courthouse was small but beautiful in the spring sunlight. Mia stood between us wearing a white dress and holding both our hands. She'd been calling Clayton Papa for months now. Ever since we'd explained in toddler-appropriate terms that he was her father. The legal battles had been exhausting. Reversing my death certificate, establishing my real identity again, fighting off Dora's last-ditch attempts to cause trouble before she fled to Europe. But we'd won. All of it. Do you, Clayton Hayes, take Taylor Rossi to be your lawfully wedded husband? The judge asked. I do, Clayton said, looking at me with such love it made my chest ache. And do you, Taylor Rossi, take Clayton Hayes to be your lawfully wedded husband? I do, I said, smiling through happy tears. Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you married. You may kiss. Mia cheered, and everyone in the small courthouse laughed. Clayton kissed me softly, sweetly, full of promise for our future. Papa and Daddy married, Mia announced to everyone, clearly thrilled. As we walked out of the courthouse as a family, legally, officially, permanently, I realized this wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. The first chapter of the life we'd fought so hard to build together, and this time nothing would tear us apart.